giving you a live look here 3 minutes shy of the 6 o'clock hour at the U.S. Capitol. President Donald Trump laid out his vision for the future of the nation in his first address to a joint session of Congress since returning to the White House. Fox News correspondent Doug Luzader has more on the speech, full of lively moments and protests from lawmakers.
We heard promises and protests last night as President Donald Trump delivered his first speech to a joint session of Congress since returning to the White House.
The golden age of America has only just begun.
Addressing a joint session of Congress for the first time in his second term, President Donald Trump highlighted his administration's accomplishments throughout its first 6 weeks.
Remove this gentleman from the chamber.
But there were interruptions. Minutes into the speech, Democratic Congressman Al Green of Texas was removed from the chamber after he interrupted Trump several times. But the president got back on track.
I deployed the U.S. military and Border Patrol to repel the invasion of our country.
Besides reducing illegal border crossings, Trump touted work with the Department of Government Efficiency, headed by Elon Musk, to cut federal spending.
And we've taken back the money and reduced our debt to fight inflation.
And the president claimed his newly enacted tariffs against China, Canada, and Mexico will make America rich again. He also said harnessing America's fossil fuel resources will lower inflation.
It's called drill, baby, drill.
Trump stressed the importance of ending the war between Israel and Hamas and the conflict between Russia and Ukraine.
It's time to end this senseless war.
Meanwhile, freshman Senator Alyssa Slotkin of Michigan gave the Democratic response.
America wants change, but there's a responsible way to make change and a reckless way.
And now it is back to work for the president and Congress. First of all, trying to prevent a government shutdown next week. In Washington, Doug Luzader, Fox News.
All right, Doug, thank you so much for that detailed breakdown. A lot to discuss this Wednesday morning, so we want to bring into the conversation none other than political analyst and historian Rich Rubino. Rich, a pleasure having you back on the show this morning. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
So a lot to dissect from President Donald Trump's address to Congress. Let's first start with your thoughts as you were watching everything unfold. Doug hit the nail on the head, saying a lot of lively moments.
Yes, and this is really the low watermark, I think, of cordiality, the low watermark, if you will, of decorum, I guess, of some sort of bipartisan collegiality. And you saw this really on both sides. On the one hand, you saw Donald Trump give a very partisan speech. 76% of those, according to one survey, who watched the speech had a positive view, because obviously we're at this time where it's really become an echo chamber where people who like the president listen to him more, listen to stations that are going to be more positive to him. Contrary-wise, those who don't like him just kind of tune him out. And you saw this really on both sides. You saw certainly the United States Congress. You saw Al Green getting up and really remonstrating against the president. And you saw members of the Congress that were Democrats just kind of sitting down. And you saw President Trump talking about his last election, for example, saying that he had won in an electoral landslide. But there's obviously something that you hear more of in a partisan type of a speech. You don't usually hear that in a State of the Union. A State of the Union is usually the president giving a laundry list or a litany, if you will, of what they expect the Congress what their proposals, what they want Congress to focus on. But this was obviously a very partisan speech and had a very partisan reaction. It's almost unprecedented.
Rich, with your political expertise, would you say Trump's address reminded you of any prior presidency?
I think that not so much the presidency, but the address itself reminded me a lot of Gerald Ford's address in 1975. Gerald Ford succeeded Richard Nixon in 1974. He pardoned Richard Nixon, and in 1974 rather, there was actually the Republicans lost 49 seats in the U.S. House of Representatives. So there was a coterie of new Republicans who called themselves the Watergate, Democrats rather, who called themselves the Watergate babies, or they were called that. And they got up and protested the speech. Some of them left before President Ford began his speech to show that they would not be as conciliatory as some of the party elders, if you will, of the Republican Party. I think that was really seen as really much a breakdown of decorum. I think that's really the one speech that really stood out to me.
Rich, as we look ahead, a lot of eyes are on the tariffs this morning. We know that President Donald Trump has spoken about this. And of course, Mexico, Canada, and China, they are retaliating because of this. What do we expect to see in the coming days, weeks, and even months? Because as you know, President Donald Trump does not shy away from threats, as he likes to call them, or even retaliation from other entities.
Yes, tariffs, he says, is the most beautiful word in the English language. For all of Donald Trump's beliefs, and certainly the one thing that he has always stayed consistent, if you can listen to his speeches or being interviewed by Oprah Winfrey going back to 1987, he says that he basically believes in tariffs, for example. He believes that they can be used as a political weapon to get other countries to genuflect to the United States' will on certain issues. And that's what Donald Trump is, I think, trying to do, certainly with Canada and with Mexico. He did say in the speech that there would probably be some hurt from them. And I think that that's one thing that I think that he fears, is that a lot of particularly farmers, for example, who might have supported Donald Trump in some of the red counties in the country would benefit from them as more and more as it makes it harder and harder. There's reciprocal tariffs, that is, for them to sell their products abroad, to sell them overseas. So he said that there would be some hurt. The question is going to be how long that hurt is going to be. I think that Donald Trump is certainly somebody who really believes that tariffs can be used as a political weapon, but from an economic perspective, we'll see. We'll see if there's going to be deleterious effects.
Yeah, and along with tariffs, we know DOGE was a hot topic for President Donald Trump. Looking ahead today, we know that Elon Musk will be meeting with Republicans to further discuss DOGE. What do you expect to come from that meeting? What are some of the highlights? Some people this morning still confused about what DOGE really is and how it impacts them.
Right, and there's certainly been protests. Senators as conservatives, Roger Marshall, who went in Kansas, who went to one of the most conservative counties in the entire country, basically got booed. He got heckled because people were saying that they were afraid that, for example, veterans would be hurt who work in the civil service, or he got to the point where he had to say God bless America, and then he left, and people were saying you're not done. So this is something that potentially could really hurt Republicans going into the midterm elections in 2026. Donald Trump has to make the case that the DOGE cuts are something that can actually benefit the American people. I think the idea that, as opposed to while some might go for deficit reduction, the money that is saved, others might go directly to the taxpayers. I think that that's something from an optical standpoint that might actually benefit him politically, but he really has to kind of change the direction. He has to change the optics, if you will, of how the Republican Party is viewed on this, because this could be something that akin to 2010, when many Democrats actually chose, because of the health care reform, because of Obamacare being unpopular at the time, many Democrats chose not to have town hall meetings, and consequently they ended up losing their reelection bids in 2010. And this time around, Mike Johnson, the Speaker, and Richard Hudson, who's chairman of the Republican Congressional Campaign Committee, have suggested to Republicans to only hold town hall meetings that are through Zoom, as opposed to actually going there and facing the voters directly.
Rich Rubino, always a pleasure having your political breakdown and your analysis. Thank you so much for joining us bright and early on this Wednesday. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much for having me on again. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.